Thank you so much, and as the mayor of Miami Beach, welcome to our beautiful city, and thank you so much for being here. What a great crowd, and really appreciate you being here. You know, resiliency is a word that you hear a lot. It's a buzzword, but it means so much more. And we are actively working here in Miami Beach to address so many issues, combating flooding, replacing our aging infrastructure. And we're not just talking about it, we are making it a top priority. Wednesday, we have a commission meeting, and our stormwater infrastructure is literally one of the highlights of our meeting. Thank you. Clean water, reliable stormwater infrastructure, effective flood prevention. We view these issues like we would any other public safety and quality of life issue. We keep people safe on our streets, and we also need to keep people and our streets dry and their homes dry. And it's a top priority for our city, and we continue to make it a top priority. We're building our dunes. We're fortifying our seawalls. We have water all around us. Biscayne Bay has been a major topic of conversation, and making sure that we keep our Biscayne Bay pristine. There's a lot of efforts going around Miami-Dade County, other cities, and Miami Beach certainly. We're doing our part and then some. Thank you. And a big part of that is the upgrading of our aging infrastructure, because when pipes leak, that's where it goes. It goes into the bay. So we need to do our part, and we're making it a big priority to make sure that we do the upgrades before we have major issues. And we've seen that. I don't want to name the cities. You all know it. We've seen cities where it's become a major problem. So thank you for being here. Really enjoy our beautiful city, this conference. It's so important that we hear, listen, and then implement the innovative and groundbreaking ideas that we're going to hear throughout this conference. And now it's my honor and pleasure of introducing a huge supporter of Aspen Ideas, Maribel Perez Wadsworth, the new CEO of the Knight Foundation. Thank you so much. God bless.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Mayor Minor. Like so many in our community, I am looking forward to your leadership of Miami Beach, and especially on the topic we're all here to talk about, climate resilience. As he said, my name is Maribel Perez Wadsworth. I'm president and CEO of the Knight Foundation. We're a foundation that is based here in South Florida and doing work to help communities be engaged and informed, because we think engaged and informed communities really are the ones that are going to drive solutions to our most pressing challenges. We need our communities, our neighbors, our elected officials, our business and civic leaders, local media, basically all of you here, to work together to address the threat of climate change. It's going to take all of us. We must work together to rise to meet this challenge. Here in South Florida, we are particularly at risk. It's estimated that by 2050, up to $23 billion in property across this region could be underwater. Last year was Miami's hottest summer on record, having broken the record set just 3 years earlier. Storms here are getting stronger, wetter, and longer. And still, Miami continues, as it has for generations, to be a beacon. Like my own family, people come here from all over the world seeking freedom and opportunity. That's why we are especially committed to developing solutions right here in South Florida, so we can serve as a model for other communities. Last year, Knight Foundation invested $8 million in 2 leading Miami-based climate science groups, Miami Waterkeeper and the Everglades Foundation. Miami Waterkeeper advocates on behalf of our watershed, emphasizing adaptation to rising seas and maintaining access to fresh water. The Everglades Foundation is at the forefront of Everglades restoration and climate resiliency across the state. With our investment, we hope to see both of these organizations expand their reach along with their capacity to translate climate science for average citizens. We're also invested in the Miami-Dade Innovation Authority, which leverages public and private dollars to supply grants to pioneering companies working on solutions to challenges like climate change. And it's because of initiatives like these, along with the leadership of our County Mayor, Daniela Levine-Cava, and partners like Florida International University, that last fall, the U.S. Economic Development Administration chose South Florida as one of 31 tech hubs and the only one designated as a climate resiliency hub. This designation will leverage our region's unique combination of coastal and marine infrastructure, energy-efficient building industries, and academic and research institutions to drive innovation in climate resilience, mitigation, and adaptation. And it also opens the potential for more than $50 million in new federal funding. Throughout my prior career as a journalist and media executive, I've seen firsthand the transformative power that access to quality, credible information can have on shaping the public discourse. And I'm passionate about ensuring that communities, especially this one, are equipped with the knowledge and resources that enable citizens to address pressing issues like climate change. The Knight Foundation is proud to support this event alongside our partners, the Related Group and the Jorge M. Perez Family Foundation. And we are eager to join with you in the search for climate solutions. Over the next 2 days, I'm sure there will be a lot of great conversations and new connections made, sparking ideas and also new ways to collaborate. Each of us has a role to play. Each of us can contribute in ways both big and small. Together, we can and will rise to meet this challenge. And now, to set the tone for this week, a moment of reflection from artist Danié Gomez-Ortigoza on the invisible threads that bind us together. Thank you.
Welcome to this space. Take a moment to think about all the different decisions that have brought you right here, right now. I'm so grateful for the Aspen Institute being the thread braiding us together this evening. Please close your eyes for 1 minute. Breathe in. Breathe out. Notice how my air is now your air. Your air is now my air. And so we are together. My name is Danié Gomez-Ortigoza. I have a platform under the name of Journey of a Braid, where I share my understanding of braiding and how it is a portal into human unification. My practice consists in braiding circles, where I braid humans together, using ribbons that represent the invisible thread that braid us together. Breathe in, breathe out. The deepest truths are invisible to the eye. We must remember how to see beyond the material if we want to get this right. You are not yourself. You are crowds of others. Observe the synchronicities. The ritual of intentional breathing symbolizes uniting something that might seem frail on its own and making it into a cluster, imbuing it with strength, imbuing it with meaning. Breathe in, breathe out. My air, your air. Now look across the room. In total silence, find a person that you don't know, but whose energy is attracting you in some way. Find each other. Lock eyes. Look into her eyes. Look into his soul. Make a commitment to find that person and introduce yourself later. Let your intuition lead you, your inner wisdom. The power of the stranger lies in what they bring out in us. With strangers, there is this temporary reordering of a balancing act that each of us is constantly attempting between our past selves and our future selves, between who we have been and who we are becoming. If only for today, give up the story about who you were told you were. Let the version of who you actually are lead your way through this space. Throughout every interaction you have with others. What is your contribution towards the making of the world right now? You are here to design the future. So let's play together. Let's manifest together. Have you ever braided hair or an object? Have you ever realized the power of 3 strands, of the collective beyond the individual? Balance. It's all about the understanding of balance. It takes 3 strands. You have 3 strands. Perhaps you've thrown them or put them aside. Perhaps they spoke to you. They were right there next to your chair. Please take your 3 strands. They look similar to this, smaller version. Let's play. Perhaps braiding is your portal, the way it has been for me. 3 strands. Past, present, future. Matter, energy, consciousness. It's just 3 strands constantly balancing out. One of them always needs to go into the middle. No words needed. Your neighbor can actually help you hold the strands. Perfect way to have a conversation. So pick the one on the right side, guide it to the middle. Take the strand furthest to the left, guide it to the middle. Back to the strand of the right. This symbolizes a peak emotion. You bring it back into the middle. Center it. Take the strand furthest to the left. That one carried fear. Another peak emotion that you need to balance. Have you realized how your mind is manifesting this simple movement? You order your hands to move and they move. Your fingers. How wise they are. You can just move them. We get used to those things, but think of it. You're manifesting this braid with your mind. You're guiding your hands. What else do you have the power to manifest right now? This is not about perfection. This will actually be a bracelet for you to carry. It's a manifestation of your intention in your wrist, the same way that I do with my hair on a daily basis. 3 strands. Bring the loose end back into the middle. What's going to make you find that strength? From the individual to the universal, clearing the energy of this planet. You are to this universe the same as a wave. The real you is the whole universe. We have been taught we exist only within our skin. But the reality is that our full body is our total external environment. 3 strands: your hands, your mind, but more than anything, your heart. 3 strands. A lot of the emptiness that we're feeling right now as humankind is because we feel alone. But the reality is that we're alone together, just like drops of water are alone, but they exist in the ocean. Turn this into a knot. May we braid ourselves together in purpose and vision. What is the contribution that you're bringing to the world right now? You are here to design the future. In a non-traditional culture such as ours, dominated by phones and by technology, we value information way more than we do wisdom. But there is a deep difference between those two. Information is just about data, but wisdom involves a crucial function: the quieting of the mind, the application of the heart, and the alchemy of reason and feeling. In the wisdom mode, we're not processing information just sequentially. We're actually standing back and viewing the whole, discerning what matters and what does not, weighing the meaning and the depth of things. This quality of wisdom is rare in our culture. More often than not, we have people with a lot of information. We haven't cultivated the quality of mind from which wisdom truly arises. I want this week to challenge you to be wise. Your work and your body has a higher purpose, whether you know it or not. You are a conduit for the universe. May we see the world for what it is: abundance. May we realize we already have all the answers. We just need you to execute it. You can only integrate them if you own all your pieces. Everything that is denied is seen as the other. You are here. I trust in your wisdom. I trust in our wisdom. Let's be wise together.
And now, United States Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm.
Hi, everybody. Humbling to come after such beautiful words, but I am so delighted to be here at the Aspen Ideas Climate and to share the stage in just a moment with America's weatherman, Al Roker. You know, Al, I don't know if you can hear me, but in all your decades of forecasting, he's really opened our eyes, our country's eyes, to the chaos and the ruin of extreme weather, and including the fact that just last year, America experienced the largest number of extreme weather events on record, again, this time 28, and the trajectory keeps getting worse. As you're probably aware, more events every year, more money spent after the fact to clean up after years of inaction. This is an example. In the 1980s, these massive disasters cost the U.S. on average about $21 billion a year. In the 1990s, it was $33 billion a year, and last year it was $100 billion, just close shy of $100 billion. So, I don't have to tell you all are completely savvy about all of this and the trajectory of these, but sometimes, in addition to speaking with our hearts, sometimes it is good to have a bit of data to be able to share with others who may not put it all together and in context. And in the heartbreak of these disasters, I've actually seen up close in my job as Energy Secretary last August in Maui. You all are familiar with the brush fire that the upcountry sparked in Hawaii, while another fire in Lahaina, which was fueled, of course, by hurricane winds and record dry weather, scorched the earth. They consumed the island. Cars with melted glass and melted tires and melted windows and gnarled pieces on the ground, people who had to flee from their homes within minutes, the fire burning so quickly that people had to literally run into the sea to get away from it. And when I was there and met with survivors, my counterparts from FEMA told me that the fires burned so hot that search and rescue teams could only go for 20 minutes at a time because their shoes would melt. Then there's Puerto Rico, an ocean away. Here, you see a picture of me. This is in the Puerto Rican city of Bayamón. There is a small household, 3 generations living there, a gentle elderly grandmother who's wheelchair bound. There you see the daughter, who is a cancer patient, and in the next room is her 20-year-old grandson who has cerebral palsy, and he's attached to a breathing machine. And each time the island is battered by a storm, they pray that their electricity stays on. The PTSD on the island of Puerto Rico is real. Storms mean life and death. Rising sea levels, obviously stronger hurricane means worse storm surges, and it puts the grid in more jeopardy. They have a terrible grid, and it's getting worse all the time, even though we're investing to try to rebuild the grid and put 100% renewable energy on the rooftops of every single house that we possibly can in Puerto Rico, including with storage. But in Puerto Rico, power means more than life, means more than lights, it means life. And we see this as well everywhere. I mean, you see it in Florida clearly. It's a familiar story in Miami Beach, where folks are asking themselves these questions, you know, is my home high enough to be able to escape this? How much am I willing to pay for property insurance? Will the places where I grew up, the schools I went to, the parks I played in, the grocery stores we shopped at, they'll still be standing even in 15 years? In fact, there was a study that was recently out that showed that 60% of Miami is going to be underwater by 2060 if we do not get our act together. So, as Energy Secretary, I travel to these places, and I'm honored to do so on behalf of the President of the United States, because he recognizes the threat of climate change. And I want to let that sink in for a second, because that's no guarantee in a president. Joe Biden sees the threat of climate change, and he has done more about it than any American president ever has. You know this, he's enacted the biggest climate laws in American history, laws that create energy, laws that offer unprecedented grants and loans and tax credits that make it irresistible for companies to produce solar and wind and manufacture EVs and batteries and generate nuclear power and clean hydrogen. 3 years into this administration, I come to report that for all you policy nerds out there, you gotta love it, because the strategy is working. Because of these actions, we are on a path to saving our planet. Just let's take solar, for example. Last year, America built and produced the most solar energy in our history. To put that in context, we produced enough solar power to power all of the University of Miami campuses for more than 853 years. Or put another way, we built enough power for 13 Hoover dams worth of power just last year. And that is because companies took us up on our incentives and announced 109 new and expanded solar manufacturing plants across America. Consumers took us up on our incentives to install solar on their homes. This is happening all across America. Consider wind. Last year, the US produced enough wind to power, another Florida example, Disney's entire electricity needs 215 times over. And then if you consider wind and solar, this year, for the first time in American history, we expect energy from wind and solar to outpace coal generation. Yes! And you know, the good news keeps on rolling in with EVs. In 2023, Americans smashed the record by buying 1.4 million EVs. Sales have quadrupled under the president's term. And, you know, by our estimates, up to 65% of new cars sold will be electric by 2030. If you look at nuclear, it's for the first time in decades, new nuclear units have come online in the US. Together, Vogtle 3 and 4 are going to generate enough clean energy equivalent to power 1 million Florida homes and businesses every year. Clean hydrogen, you can see on this chart, there's more hydrogen electrolyzers coming down the pike than ever before. Electrolyzers means green hydrogen. Last fall, the president announced $7 billion to create 7 clean hydrogen hubs, full ecosystems of producers and consumers and connective infrastructure. That chart doesn't even include those hubs. And by replacing natural gas and diesel, these hubs are going to slash 25 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions every year, more than 7 years of carbon emissions from the city of Miami, for example. Add it all up, and you get a clean energy revolution. By 2030, we're on pace to double clean electricity. 80% of our electricity will be clean. We're on pace to cut emissions for sure by 40% because of Bill and Ira, and then 50% with additional action by state and local and other partners. We're on pace to prevent up to 18,000 deaths from air pollution, 118,000 asthma attacks. I mean, think about it. I mean, that family in Bayamon, real life consequences for real people. But, of course, the job is not done. The red shaded area on this graph shows where America would be without the president's climate laws. The green shows where we will be because of them. And then check out the blue. The blue shows where we need to be if we're going to hit net zero emissions by 2050. We've got to add 2,000 gigawatts of clean energy and storage capacity to the grid. That's almost double the total generation capacity that we've got right now. We've got to build new transmission lines at twice our current speed. We've got to do advanced reconductoring and grid enhancing technologies. We've got to strengthen our partnerships both here and abroad. We've got to share technology. We've got to hold each other accountable to our goals. And, you know, if you look at the blue, you'll see that these things are within our grasp. It is not a given. We have to work like heck. We have to adopt more policy, but it is possible. And, you know, this is where we're going to be if we roll our progress back. So we are at a moment. We are at this incredible point. We do not want to be undoing 3 years, not just 3 years really, but decades of work by the people in this room. People that have moved us forward. People, thank you, who helped the president to pass his climate laws. I know that there are so many in this place who have made this possible. And sometimes when you are in the middle of history, of a history-making moment, sometimes it's hard to tell because you're in the middle of it. But when you look back, this is going to be the moment that decided it all. America has never had the tools or the money that it does today to take on climate change. So join us. Join us. If you're an activist, help us protect these landmark climate laws. If you're an investor, help us fund this clean energy revolution. If you're a graduate, join the American Climate Corps. Help lead our country's climate workforce. If you're an American who gives a damn about the fate of this planet, our one and only shared home, come and join this fight. There's this old parable prayer about a man who goes before God, is passed away, and God says to him at the pearly gates, show me your wounds, your scars. And if he has no scars, God says, was there nothing worth fighting for? At the end of the day, may we all bear the scars of this, the most important fight in the history of the world. Thank you so much.
Please welcome Al Roker to the stage.
Are you on this
No,
side?
it's okay.
Here.
No worries.
Please,
All right,
I didn't
all
know
good.
where you were coming
All
from.
good. All good. Oh, they left the gong.
What is that? Oh.
Everybody all together. You everybody feel better?
Yes.
Excellent.
Did you
Excellent.
bring that gong? Is that
No, that was
Oh.
from the artist, Annie.
Okay.
So she left it out here. And
Nice.
this lovely thing there.
Beautiful.
Right there. Anyway, how's everybody doing? Wow, that was really tepid. How's everybody doing? Come on.
Come on.
Let's show a little energy. Energy secretary. Anyway, it's going to be a long 17 minutes. You know, Secretary Granholm, you've listed out a number of the initiatives that you're all rolling out here, and polling shows that a lot of Americans, climate may still not be at the top of their list. Although, I think when I go out and I'm doing stories and I'm talking with people, I think the polling is missing that. I think people are intrinsically concerned about our climate. What's your feeling on that?
Well, when you see the number of these extreme weather events and how they have cascaded all across the country, I think that people are getting that, hey, this, how many records are we going to break every year? Last year, record-breaking year, it's going to be the coolest year we've ever experienced if we don't get our act together, right? So I think that there's starting to be a realization. I do, this crowd is very savvy, and they've all done a lot of polling and know the language that has been resonant in the past up to this point has been language often, depending on your audience, right, around for communities that have not really, that think, they're skeptical, the language around jobs and the economy, the economy of clean energy, the future-facing jobs your kids can take on, that's resonant. But I do think that these events are speaking for themselves, right? Are speaking for people. I'm glad to hear that you're feeling like there seems to be some kind of shift in the direction of recognition that this is the existential crisis of our time.
Yeah, as you know, we report on it during the day and on the Today Show and our NBC News Climate Unit. We do these different stories. I think people are looking for solutions. So, and I think connections have to be made. So as you roll out infrastructure, as you roll out these initiatives, how do you make sure people make that connection?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's one of the reasons why the president, you'll be hearing from Deb Haaland shortly, right, is sent the cabinet around to so many states. What I like to do in states, because it's within my jurisdiction, is to break it down for what it means for a family, a person. So, for example, if I visit a homeowner in Tennessee who had their house weatherized because the president's agenda has plussed up the weatherization funding, tenfold,
But you know, those numbers, billions of dollars, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. But when somebody pulls out their electric bill after their home has been weatherized, and they show you the bill before, and they show you the bill after, and they've saved $300 because they've weatherized their home, that's real. It's very human. And so those stories around the country are really important. And the second bit of story around the country that I think is starting to resonate is that in all of these states, even you know, in states that might be considered more skeptical, so much of these investments in manufacturing facilities, et cetera, building batteries and EVs and solar panels. You know, we're building all these solar panels in Georgia and Alabama and Ohio. And people love that notion of their kids working at a future-facing career in clean energy. They love the notion of people being able to stay in their community. These jobs are really great jobs. And so because of those investments around the country and all the pockets of America, I feel like that is another way that it's resonant. So stories on the ground of people getting jobs in this space, good paying jobs, union jobs, and the story of how individuals may be benefiting from adopting some of these technologies, I think are ways to get it out. Now, the question is, how do you take one little story and amplify it when we have such a bifurcated, trifurcated, multifurcated media environment, right? I mean, it takes a lot of strategy to be able to do that. And fortunately, there's a lot of great strategists who are in the room trying to figure that out as I speak.
You know, you were talking about these clean energy jobs. You know, we've been kind of leaders in propane and natural gas, things like that. But how difficult? You know, there's just a story in the news recently about China moving forward to become energy dominant in clean energy.
Yeah.
How are we going to compete with that? How are we going to make sure that we're the dominant factor?
Well, let's just say this. There's enough work to go around. China has a lot of work to do, and I'm glad that they are investing in a lot of solar, for example, but they're also still investing in coal. They want to be leading on electric vehicles, so do we. This is from a dominance perspective, these laws that we have passed in the United States have really put us on the path to meet our goals, our strategy from COP and Paris, et cetera. That's not so much the case with China, but we have got the technology here. The technologies always start here. We've got 17 national labs at the DOE that we are working on next generation technologies. We always, they go from concept to lab to, maybe early stage deployment, early stage demonstration. And then in the past, China has come and has been successful in, because of their industrial strategy, in luring those investments there. And this is why what the president has done is so remarkable, because he has said, no, we're not going to just sit back and allow other countries to poach our technology. We're going to create an environment that makes the United States the irresistible nation to invest. And most companies, certainly in the industrialized world, prefer to work with countries where there's rule of law and where their IP is not stolen and all of that. And so the United States becomes now a place where we've put these 30% tax credits on the table, and we are competitive with other countries that are also doing a lot of industrial strategy as well. So to me, this strategy of creating a green industrial strategy and focusing on the supply chains where we've lost a lot of it, including incentivizing, identifying, pulling those here, it's working. 600 factories have announced that they are opening up in the United States in all pockets of the country since these bills were passed. So
talk about that. The government can't do this by itself.
No, that's right.
There has to be a private,
completely. It's private sector led, government enabled is how we describe it. Because obviously the private sector has got to be doing this. And then, the Inflation Reduction Act provides great tax credits, but obviously the private sector's got to be doing the investment in the capital as well.
Well, you talk about the IRA. The Republican Party they have a narrow majority, and they've on record have voted 31 times to try to repeal this thing. As we're looking ahead to 8 months and a re-election, how durable is this act when it comes to a change in administration?
Well, let me say a couple things. One is the tax credits are 10 years. So we're expecting that those tax credits are going to stay in place. People have acted in reliance upon those tax credits. They're still going into the ground right now as a result of that reliance. So it is highly unlikely that you would get a Congress that would undo all of that, especially since 60% or so of these investments have gone to red states. So this is part of the strategy we've been obsessed with at the Department of Energy. Deploy, deploy, deploy. Deploy, deploy, deploy. We've got to get this out as much as possible, as fast as we possibly can, because we want it to stick. And I just feel like it would be, it would just not happen, that it would be undone once all of these investments are out, because the business community would go crazy.
Yeah. You know, I'm old enough to remember the Peace Corps, how important the Peace Corps was. Talk to me about the American Climate Corps.
No, the Peace Corps still exists.
I know,
Okay.
but I do. We weren't burying the Peace Corps, but in addition to the Peace Corps, I remember back before it was just the Corps. But the American Climate Corps, what, as a young person thinking about this, what excites you about that?
Well, first of all, young people are totally so many young people are totally focused on climate and climate change and feeling like they have a responsibility to make a difference in this. And this will give, so we started out with 20,000. The goal was to get 20,000 young people to be partnered with through AmeriCorps, et cetera, and with the positions that we're creating inside of the federal government as a partner. And then he announced, the president announced he wants to get to 60,000 by 2030. That is an army of climate warriors, which is fantastic. I mean, the more people who work in this area, the more committed they are to it, the more determined they are that stuff won't go backwards, but only forwards. I think, you know, to me, those are warriors I want to be in the trenches with.
You know, so much about climate tends to disproportionately affect communities of color, communities that are disadvantaged. You know, your administration, you know, you've $366 million to prioritize renewable energy on tribal land. You know, so many communities that have people of color are being disproportionately affected. How important is this when it comes to environmental injustice to try to rectify that?
Yeah, this is such an important piece of the structure of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, that the incentives to address structural inequity by embedding structural equity into the incentives is really important. So for example, say you are a solar developer and you want to do a community solar project. If you get a 30% tax credit, not just a tax deduction, tax credit, right? On top of that, if you locate that project in a disadvantaged community, you get another 10% stacked on. If you use American content, meaning US-made solar panels, you get another 10% tacked onto it. If you pay prevailing wage and use apprenticeships, you get another 10% tacked on. If you're going to a tribal community, you might get another 10 to 20% tacked on. You could get up to 70% tax credit for this, going to places that have been burdened. And we know, I mean, here in Miami, every community, the poor bear the disproportionate burden, both in cost and in health. And, you know, communities have been bisected by not just freeways, but by refineries. And it's wrong. And so, number one, the tax incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act take us a good way to repair and heal. The second, and by the way, just one piece of data on that, is that studies have shown since the passage, the investments that have been 2 times the investments have gone to disadvantaged communities than to other communities that are in similar populations. So it's been working. The president, of course, has a Justice 40 initiative. It's one of the first executive orders that he signed to make sure that 40% of the benefits of these investments go to disadvantaged communities, communities of color. And so the Department of Energy, so we've got tax credits for the Inflation Reduction Act, and we have grants, right, for the bipartisan infrastructure law. And they work together. One creates supply, one creates demand. On the supply side, on the bipartisan infrastructure law side, when a company is applying for a funding opportunity announcement at the DOE, for the first time in the history of the DOE, we require a community benefits plan for them to be able to get the funding, and their proposal is graded on the strength of that plan. 20% of their overall, you know, they have to have technical merit, et cetera, but they have to have a community benefits plan, and that means the community has to be at the table. What are the jobs that will go to the community? What is the health benefits that will renound to the community? So those factors are really important for us. We have created a whole new office of energy justice and equity to be able to help oversee our efforts in this. And to me, too, this is something that's really important to be durable and to embed in our processes so that the next energy secretary does not undo it.
Assuming there is a next.
Well, somebody, there will be at some point, there will be
a change.
Right,
one doesn't know.
Change.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. In closing, what do you know that makes you feel optimistic about where we're going?
Well, I feel so lucky to be Energy Secretary at this moment, having access to the 17 national labs who do all of this modeling. And what makes me feel optimistic is what I was showing before you came out, is the trajectory of the ability for us to get to net zero by 2050, to really be leading in the world on how it's done, makes me so happy. Not Pollyanna, we have a work to do, but I feel like we have taken the biggest step of certainly my lifetime to be able to address climate change, and that makes me extraordinarily happy.
All right. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for what you do. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you. Oh, let me drop it.
And now, Dan Porterfield and Dan Gelber.
Good evening. I'm Dan Gelber. I'm the former mayor of Miami Beach. You happy I'm not the mayor anymore? Is that the deal? It's great to be a former mayor. I get to sit in terrible traffic and curse somebody else's name instead of my own, so it's been great. And it's really, you know, I just want to welcome you all here. I guess about 30 years ago, I met Dan Porterfield on the basketball court. We became immediate friends. He loves to pass, and I'm a volume shooter, and so we got along very well. And the truth of the matter is, the best part of my game is trash talking. And he is a person of incredible and generous spirit, and never seemed to get upset about it. So we stayed friends for decades. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I called him. He had just, I guess, become the CEO, the president of the Aspen Institute, which is a big job. And I immediately called him to make fun of him because that's what trash talkers do. And I said, the Aspen Institute on its website says they are going to solve, quote, the most important challenges facing the world. And I said, not the second most important, not just substantial challenges, you're going for the most important challenges, number one. So he took that seriously, and here we are today for the 3rd annual Aspen Climate Festival in Miami Beach. And the truth of the matter is, you couldn't think of something as important as this, something as audacious as solving this issue. And this is the best place to have it because our city is a 7.5-mile island built on porous limestone where our residents see sunny day flooding on a regular basis. So we're seeing it. But in my view, there's really 2 parts to solving this problem. The first part is getting the know-how down. figuring out the engineering solutions, the science, understanding the behavioral modifications that have to happen, figuring out what the route is to solve this problem, because it is, I believe, 100% a surmountable problem. And that is what the first part of this conference is all about. But the second part of this conference is about having the political will to take those actions, no matter how inconvenient, no matter how difficult, no matter how costly, because there's just no other option. And that is why at this conference, not only are the smartest people in the world here who know this topic from a science and technology and engineering perspective, but we also have public officials, leaders from other countries. The great mayor of Cleveland, Justin Bibb, brought 50 climate mayors here so they could be part of this discussion and help solve this problem. And so for me, I couldn't thank you all enough for coming here, because for my city to have this amount of critical mass of brain power and willpower at our doorstep helps us as it will help everybody. But I do want to thank first my friend Dan Porterfield. The truth of the matter is he was a great teammate in every way, and I think I've never said that to you publicly. And he is the second best basketball player on this podium. All right, the trash talking never ends. But really what the Aspen Institute has done in sponsoring this and doing this for now 3 years and hopefully forever is it said, we're going to do this till we solve the problem. And that's an incredibly audacious goal, but an incredibly critical one. So thank you, Dan Porterfield.
Thank you, sir.
And I also, I need to thank my former chief of staff, who's also really one of my closest friends. Michelle Berger has been really instrumental in putting this whole thing together every year. And if you want anything done in the world, she'll take care of it. So with that, all right, I'll say for now, the best basketball player on the podium, only because I'm about to get off the podium, Dan Porterfield.
Thank you, Mayor Gelber. He is, I think, the best basketball player on the podium. It's true that he loved to shoot, and I like to pass. So playing with Mayor Gelber all those years, turns out it made me a much better rebounder, too. Well, we are in love with Miami Beach and the greater Miami community in South Florida. It's such a privilege for the Aspen Institute to be partners with you, Dan, with the entire community. And I strongly feel, having been doing this now a couple of years and met many leaders in the climate space, that Mayor Gelber, his partner, Michelle Berger, are really two exceptional leaders who have made it possible for us to be here today. And I also would like to thank a few others that have made it possible. Mayor Steve Miner, you heard from tonight, our first chance to work together with him. The Knight Foundation president is also new, Maribel Perez-Wadsworth, a fantastic leader. We're very grateful to their support to make this possible. Mayor Daniela Levine-Cava from Miami-Dade County, and Mayor Francis Suarez from the city of Miami, incredibly important supporters. Thank you for them. Speaking of teams, the Aspen Institute has the greatest board of trustees in nonprofit America. And out there somewhere is our board chair, Margot Pritzker, who's done so much to help us pull it together to emphasize a few key priority areas, especially including this work. Also, our program leaders, and I would like to especially call out Greg Gershuni, Maria Ortiz-Perez, Graham Veazey, and our public programs team. Please join me in thanking all of those colleagues. There is a big group of sponsors here in South Florida supporting this convening 3 times now. And so they include as title partners, the Knight Foundation, the Related Group, the Jorge M. Perez Family Foundation, as well as sponsors Stuart Miller and the Lennar Foundation. Thank you to our sponsors for making this possible. And as Dan said, the Aspen Institute is a global nonprofit organization whose purpose is to ignite human potential and build understanding and new possibilities. We do that in many ways and places, but always through dialogue, through convening, through listening, through practical problem solving. Our vision is for free, just, and equitable societies, and we believe that everybody has a role to play in bringing that vision to reality. Nothing's more important, we believe, towards that than engaging a broad spectrum of people from all walks of life for smart, open, informed, nonpartisan, engaging dialogue that leads to learning and solutions. That's what this convening has been all about now for 3 years, and so much good has come out of it here in Florida and around the country. The work of the Aspen Institute on various carbon reduction programs has expanded considerably because of the ideas that we've all shared in this setting. We are firmly fact-based here, solutions-oriented. We try to highlight research, community wisdom, energy innovations, new technologies, new policy approaches, change-making across the board, always with people together like you, builders and doers, envisioning a better world for our children and for our futures. So thank you all for being here. Enjoy the conference, and we look forward to all of the new ideas that will come out of our conversations today. Now it is my pleasure to invite, well, maybe the voice of God will do it for me. Please welcome Bill Nye and Gina McCarthy.
Bill Nye.
Inertia is a property of matter.
We love that song, people.
Do you think they can tell which one is which?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So, any questions on what we've covered so far?
It's perfectly good to me. I'm done.
So you have a thing. You have All in America. Cities All in America.
That's very close. It's America is all in. Aren't we?
America's all in.
America is all in.
And so...
Do they have any interest in what we're all in?
I'm very interested. I don't know about these people.
Well, we were chatting earlier about all the work that both of us are doing, and I think the one thing that connects us in an obsessive way is to try to address the climate challenge. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm joining Bloomberg's America is All In effort, and that's basically an opportunity to deal with about 5,000 people that really care about climate action. And we're going out and we're doing some traveling and we're doing a tour to talk to all of the states that we can and cities we can and reach them, like places like Cleveland, Ohio, we're going, Houston, Texas, Seattle, Washington. That's all on the agenda for the next few months or so. And we're going to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, all the resources that are available and opportunities, and how all of these cities and communities can access this money so no one's left behind.
So, 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Where did they come from? How did 5,000 people find each other?
Oh, they're from all different kinds of arenas. They're state governors, they're mayors, they're members of coalitions that deal with clean air. They're folks that are in the hospital sector. They're folks that are in the business sector. You know, basically they bring a level of coordinated expertise to these issues so that people can understand that there's challenges that we all face, but we can actually work together to address this challenge.
So the places you mentioned were cities.
That's correct.
So I don't know if you heard about this, but the United States is divided.
In what way?
Politically.
Oh,
you probably haven't heard anything about it. But anyway, so how do us in the concerned community of climate concerned people, the deep question is, how do we reach people who are not on board, who are not concerned with climate change? You know, there are people running for president of the United States, and one guy and all his sycophants who are not on board with this. They don't acknowledge that climate change is a problem, let alone what anybody's going to do about it. And it is largely cities versus not cities. So does America All In have a plan to go to not cities, notcities.com?
I think that we're certainly doing a lot more than just in 3 or 4 cities. Those are the ones we're traveling to. But if you look at it, Houston is not the bastion of blue.
No, not exactly,
so,
no.
Well, part of the issue is on climate is, we're going out talking about, the 300 plus billions of dollars in investment, the 200 plus thousand jobs that have been created through the Inflation Reduction Act. And frankly, you don't have to be a climate advocate to be smart that there's money on the table, and the shift to clean energy is going to make money. The shift to clean energy is going to clean up our air. The shift to clean energy is going to be the path forward for many cities to actually save families money. So there's many benefits that are much more sort of personal that we have to talk about, or else we're just going to keep spinning our wheel and not address what is the global existential challenge of our time, which is climate change. So I'll go to Houston, we'll talk to anybody. The issue is that we have to get real, we have to get moving, and the time is too short to sit around being negative or arguing about whether climate change is real. If they don't want to talk about that, then take the money, go to clean energy, still maintain your own sort of wing of ideas of what's right and what's wrong, but let's just get moving.
Done. That's simple.
I think that's it.
So
how do you deal with people that actually...
I haven't figured it out, man. I've been trying
to get the question out.
Well, I've been trying
but you do this all the time. You must run into it, right?
That's all I do is run into it. Is people who do not want to face the truth. Yeah. And, I used to work in the oil field. People do not realize this. People were talking about Texas earlier today. I used to work in Snyder. Anyone? Snyder, Texas? It's the stage is a little bigger than Snyder, Texas. But they have, it is just oil wells, as far as you can see, just one right next to each other. And now they're building enormous wind turbines in West Texas. But the problem is still getting the electricity from out there to where it's needed most. So with this in mind, I'm all for these, like weatherizing people's homes.
Yep.
These individual actions. And I say all the time, recycling bottles is great. Kooky for it. Recycling paper is good, but that's not
going to make
these big things that we need. So do you have, are you all involved in big things? Of course she is. What big things are you involved in?
Yes, a few things that I think of as big. I think the work that we're trying to do on America's All In is a really big thing. Because, I worked on the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed. And really it was built on the premise that if you don't want to argue about climate change, that's fine, but you should argue about getting good jobs, and a lot of them. You should argue about saving families money. You should argue about growing really good paying union jobs too. That would be good. So there are so many ways in which I think you can connect as a human being to this issue that doesn't have to get make you turn to some political, arena that doesn't allow you to act, act in your own best interest. So I work in America's All In, but I'm also working for a couple of private investment companies who actually want to invest in emerging technologies in the global South.
What are they investing in?
I think
what are
that's
they investing in?
They're investing in clean energy.
You'd have to
They're investing in advancing food systems in India. They're investing in advancing clean water in Africa. These are fundamental staples that every country in the world needs to have if you want to continue to actually mature these economies. So I'm not interested in single solar arrays in the middle of nowhere. I want system change. I want to actually recognize that the United States has an obligation to provide resources to the countries that we have damaged with our greenhouse gas emissions. I think it's time. And if we can do it in a way that advances sustainable economies, it advances national security and international security for all of us.
Are you saying we wouldn't have to fight wars overseas to get oil if we had electricity here renewably? That's crazy.
It may sound like pie in the sky, but I actually think there's a reality to that, yeah.
Well, the other thing, there's this, you can feel guilty as somebody who grew up in the developed world, that we pumped out all these greenhouse gases and the world's warming and it's all our fault and all, then that's very reasonable. But the other thing is all that energy enabled the developed world to come up with all this crazy technology. You know, if you're living without electricity, you probably will not invent a transistor, for example. Probably not. And so it's in everybody's best interest. I say all the time, people are more alike than they are different. We are all in this together. Nobody's leaving the Earth. You know, I work in space exploration, advancing space science and exploration with the Planetary Society. People, we're not going to go live on Mars. Like, I mean, I love you all, but when you open the door of the spacecraft.
Elon Musk thinks we're going.
Well, he said he wants to die there, but not on impact. Which I get it, you know. So you guys, many years ago, this is when Elon Musk, you brought up Elon Musk. He's a hugely influential.
Why did I do this?
So everybody, do you know Elon Musk is nominally the second richest guy in the world? Do you know the richest guy?
No, I thought he was number one.
No, Putin is Vladimir Putin is the richest guy in the world.
Yeah.
It hasn't affected his politics, so that's irony, everybody. But people, years ago, Elon Musk would be introduced as Elon Musk, founder of PayPal. There weren't even hyphens. This is Elon Musk, founder of PayPal. PayPal, you know, the online money thing. And then he had this vision of building rockets and this and that. I gave him a ride to the airport a long time ago. And he's changed. I would say he's changed. But everybody...
in what way has he changed?
Well, whatever I'm going to say is going to end my career. But
okay, then.
He's less one of us than when I met him. But understand, he wanted to go to Mars. This is a digression, but only a little one. He wanted to go to Mars, and he went to the scientific engineering community. How do I get to Mars? And everybody pointed out, that in general, you don't want to build a rocket so big it could leave Earth and go all the way to Mars or the moon. You want to build rockets to go in Earth orbit, and then you'd refuel, you'd build up a rocket in Earth orbit and then go on to Mars. And so he embraced this, and say what you will, but SpaceX had almost 100 launches last year. This is the most exciting time in space exploration since the Apollo era. And say what you will, but in the background of both Musk's vision and Jeff Bezos' vision is making renewable rocket fuel. Making rocket fuel right out of carbon dioxide in the air.
My family's going to be really excited about that opportunity.
Who will?
My family.
Your whole family? Yeah, let's go. And there's a few people I wouldn't mind sending to Mars. No, really.
I think there are a number that are from Mars right now.
I have some ideas. But you guys, if this pursuit of this extraordinary goal leads to a way to make essentially kerosene, diesel fuel out of air, that would be cool as heck. You know, if we could make renewable aviation fuel, everybody's SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. Airplane fuel and rocket fuel are very close. It's just, there's some additives to keep it from freezing and stuff. But if we could do that, then we could keep our planes flying. We wouldn't have to change everything. Could be fantastic. So I always say, let's go. So with that in mind, are you involved in, I'm going to call factories for making fuel, factories for taking municipal solid waste and doing something?
Yeah, in
cool
a few
with it?
cases, yeah. I mean, I'm involved in anything that's going to get me to where I think we need to go, which
For
is...
example?
Well, I'm working with a company right now that is working on how to, well, one of them is easy. It's working on HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, and how do you begin to get them out of the system.
Stop making them and using them?
Yeah. And shift to things that are so much less carbon intensive. So that's a really good thing.
When I worked in a bike shop.
A what?
A bicycle shop.
Okay.
A what? Yes. I was younger. Anyway, the worship solvent, if you could get Freon.
Oh, yeah.
You could get, chlorinated fluorocarbon to squirt on the mechanical parts, they would get so clean. And then in 1983 or 5, Sherry discovered ozone being broken down by chlorinated fluorocarbons. What's his last name? Help me out.
I can't think of it. Say it again? Well, we can move on.
Oh, really? Anyway, then everybody freaked out. Everybody was wringing their hands. Oh my gosh.
Does anybody know what we're talking about? Or does everybody know what we're talking about?
So you want to
I'm not sure I do. So
well, you want to clean grease off of things. It happens. Their cars have grease on them. Bicycle chains have grease on them. The same thing that's used as an efficient refrigerant, the fluid that flows through a refrigerator, also turns out to be a great degreaser. Everybody was freaking out when this stuff was discovered that this stuff causes ozone to break down, that the O3 becomes O2 very fast and doesn't replenish.
Remember the hole in the ozone layer?
The hole in the ozone is slowly healing because the man, who was probably a woman, passed legislation to keep it from being used, and so people were wringing their hands, freaking out, what are we going to do? And then people in Florida invented these citrus solvents. So you just think of the innovations that are possible when our backs are against the wall or when we decide we have to do it. And there's a thing right now where everybody, the premise is that regulations are bad. And my feeling is, no, they can't, like we have an agreement. We drive on the right. Okay, if we didn't have that regulation, there would be issues, or like really fast. And there are other countries, where they drive on the other side, but they've all agreed that they're going to drive on one. You pay taxes on the whole road, yes, but you only get to use one half of it at a time. And so what we want are regulations that are sophisticated or are appropriate. Are you guys working on policy and regulations?
Well, I just want to be clear that I left the administration. So I did work on those things when I was the EPA administrator. That was fun. And when I was in the White House, I did the same thing. I kind of like regulations that are done well. I don't know what our world would look like if we didn't have them.
There you go, yes.
But I also think there's lots of other things that are going on today that are interesting and exciting. Look, regulations don't solve things. They make things more manageable, right?
Yes.
But today, if you want to tackle climate change, you have all of the technologies, products, and processes you absolutely need to actually move very fast and accelerate and address the climate challenge as we continue to innovate. That's the good news. The issue is we just have to get it done. That's the challenge. And in the United States, I think we're moving as quickly as we can. I'm proud of the work that's been done. But globally, we don't have our act together in a way that's going to get us where we need to go. So while I'm worried about Elon Musk, I'm a hell of a lot more worried about my kids and what their future looks like. And that's no joke.
So his name came up, say what you will, but Tesla is a very popular car. It's the most popular car in the world. And, you know, electric vehicles do not solve our problems. They're just so much more efficient than gas-powered cars. So,
well, I'm not suggesting that he isn't a genius. I'm suggesting that it would be much better if he were a genius with much better scruples, much better understanding of how the world works, much more caring about normal human beings. You know, I went and visited his plant in California when I was at
Fontana?
At the EPA, yeah. And, you know, and I love electric vehicles. They're great. I have one. I'm not disputing that. But when I went in there, I was looking at it. The entire manufacturing is all robotics, right? Which is, you know, they have a right to do this. But I met with him afterwards in his office, and he started to sit down and lecture me on how I don't do clean car standards right. That I should do this and do that and do this, and because he knows better. And I looked at him and I said, well, I don't think your robots work very well either. You know, and I basically said, you know, you have no idea how to do any of these things. So, you know, kind of get out of my face. And we never met again. I can't imagine.
Surprising.
I just can't imagine what went wrong.
So, along this line, I say all the time, we have to work the problem every way we can, everything all at once. So, regulations are a thing. Innovation, as our backs are against the wall, is important. But what about redistribution of wealth? So, this is a difficult thing. So, you guys, I understand. I'm of a certain age. This idea that if wealthy people don't have to pay taxes, then they'll employ people, and those people and the money will trickle down. Intuitively, that should work. That'd be great. But it just doesn't work.
Trickle-down economics.
No, they've tried it. You guys, we have tried it 16 times, and it just does not work. And so this is something we got to push back against, because it's one more thing, one more way to work the climate problem, in my opinion. When we have this disparity of wealth, we end up with disparity in access to energy.
Yep.
And what we want, what the ultimate goal, everybody, or not ultimate, no, sorry, a fundamental goal. No, really, I messed up. The fundamental goal is to raise the standard of living of women and girls. When you raise the standard of living of women and girls, everybody is better off. The old saying, happy women and girls, happy life. It goes something like that. And so...
I haven't heard that, but that's a good one.
There's another, I don't remember, there's another way to say it. It rhymed. I've lost track of that. So in order to do that, we got to have clean water, renewable, reliable electricity, and access to the internet, or whatever the kids call the internet, in the coming decades. And for that, we've got to have unlimited electricity, essentially unlimited electricity.
Yeah.
And you guys, you know, I remember the first Earth Day. I grew up in the city of, people are from Michigan here, right? And you all go like this. I grew up in the city of Washington, okay? And the first Earth Day.
Was that Jennifer Granholm? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, she was here. Yeah, I think she does this, yeah. But she was born in Canada, right?
That's what I heard.
Yeah, so I don't know, what was she thinking? Anyway, the first Earth Day, everybody wanted you to do less. You know, drive less, use less electricity, wear dirty clothes. You know, if you can manage, just don't eat. Do you remember the Aryans?
Oh my God.
Remember those guys?
Yeah.
And so they're going to live off of air. And it was just, they were debunked, shocking. But, yeah, I'm coming. So that turns out to be not what people want.
No, it's not about sacrifice. It has to be about opportunity.
It's exactly. So
that's it.
The key to the future is not to do less, it's to do more with less. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Please welcome United States Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland.
Hi, everyone. Hello. How's everybody doing? Excellent. Okay, sorry, I have to get a little organized here. I am so happy to be here with all of you. It's an honor to be here with such an outstanding crowd of climate champions in a community I have proudly been a part of for decades. Hello, Aspen Ideas Climate. So everyone here today understands these simple truths. The climate crisis is real, it's happening now, and it's uprooting lives across our planet. Here in the United States, the climate crisis threatens the future of the landscapes and resources we depend on. We can't mistake these threats, from wildland fires raging across the West to rising sea levels that spell disaster for iconic places like right here in Miami Beach. We're also seeing similar crises play out across our globe. It's a shared reality of ours that keeps me up at night. I'm sure it keeps a lot of you up as well. But it's the folks in this room and the historic progress made possible by President Biden's Investing in America agenda that give me hope for future generations. At the top of our priority list is advancing the sustainable and just transition of our country's future toward one grounded in clean, renewable energy. Despite the fact that the previous administration did everything they could to hobble the clean energy programs at the Department of the Interior, we're making up for lost time. As we focus on this urgent and overdue transition, we're supercharging efforts to build a clean energy economy. That includes the approval of dozens of new renewable energy projects on our public lands, from solar to geothermal to wind, that will bring affordable clean energy to millions of households. Using the power of our ocean, we're building an offshore wind industry from the ground up. We have approved the nation's first 6 offshore wind energy projects, with many more under review, and we're fundamentally changing how we work with states, Indian tribes, and the labor community early and often in the process. This is part of an unprecedented progress in building a domestic clean energy industry that will benefit the planet and communities across our country. As we transition toward a sustainable future, we must also ensure that the landscapes we depend on can continue to thrive on a changing planet. That's where collaborative landscape-level conservation steps in. At Interior, we're leveraging an extraordinary $2 billion in funding from the President's Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act to advance community-led ecosystem restoration across our country. That agenda is putting resources where they can make the largest difference. Importantly, it also advances a mission that is near and dear to my heart: co-stewardship alongside the indigenous communities who have stewarded lands and waters since time immemorial. Collaborative land management agreements between tribes and the federal government have emerged in recent decades to varying degrees of success. But the Biden-Harris administration is the first to leverage co-stewardship, shared management, and decision-making as an intentional strategy to preserve ancestral homelands and fulfill our trust and treaty obligations to tribes. Successful co-stewardship ensures indigenous knowledge, a deep understanding of the land and wildlife incurred over millennia is a most essential strategy to tackle the climate crisis. This helps to ensure that tribal voices and the knowledge they hold are front and center in our efforts, from protecting the salmon and Alaska streams and rivers they depend on, to the bison that underpin the prairie grassland ecosystem. This progress is substantial, and one of the steps we're taking to ensure that we can reach our climate and conservation goals and build resilience in the face of climate change, not just for our kids and grandkids, but for all future generations. The reality is, we need young folks across our country who are eager to play a role in this work. They are our future, and we cannot create sustainable and durable solutions without them. At the department, we're engaging youth from across the country in our conservation efforts as we build out President Biden's American Climate Corps. One of the very exciting ways we're moving this work forward is through our Indian Youth Service Corps, which we were proud to launch and which provides meaningful education, employment, and training opportunities to Indigenous youth throughout conservation projects on public and tribal lands. To date, we have given the green light to over 50 projects across our bureaus, from bison and Lakota language revitalization in South Dakota to the restoration of indigenous food systems in New Mexico. Last year, we committed $15 million toward our Youth Corps programs from the President's Investing in America agenda. But to be honest, it's not enough. We won't reach our goals without substantial, dedicated, and transformative funding that will help us meet this moment head-on, to address the climate crisis and engage young people in the solutions we need. To the philanthropic leaders in the room, I hope you will join us. I challenge everyone to partner with us so that the department can expand this program for more Indigenous youth in more communities across America. Together, the department and our partners can make their contributions part of the legacy we will leave behind. I'll end on this. I've never been more grateful to be in such powerful company, alongside committed and passionate advocates who are giving their all to ensure we can pass down a livable, thriving planet. Our work isn't over, but we've made historical progress together, and I thank you. And with that, I'd love to get our Q&A session started with two fierce Indigenous youth. I'd like to invite Talia and Wombly up to the stage. I'm so honored to be here with the both of you. We had a chance to chat a little bit backstage, and I couldn't have thought of two more amazing young folks to be up here and have a conversation with. So, Talia, I'm going to start with you. You can introduce yourself and go for your first question.
Cool. Thank you. English kenach Talia Davis. Singit kenach kajisuch yuchatluasalk. Yesh kadach den tanachatsiti kikwandach ayachat. That was a abridged version of a traditional Tlingit introduction. What I said was, in English, I'm called Talia Davis. In Tlingit, my name is Kajisuch. I am Raven Sea Pigeon, and I'm from Cake, Alaska. Cake is a small Tlingit village in southeast Alaska, only accessible by ferry or plane. And I grew up there scraping the backbones of salmon and eating berries that my sister picked really hard. And I didn't realize how lucky I was to grow up where I grew up until I left for college. And once I left home, it really ignited a fire in me to protect and heal the lands and waters that raised me. So now I'm a graduate student at Oregon State University. I'm also a Fresh Tracks trainer. Fresh Tracks is a youth-led revolution that centers cross-cultural community building, healing, and also climate. And Fresh Tracks partners with the Native Youth Climate Adaptation and Leadership Congress, or NYCALC. And NYCALC offers high school age students the opportunity to learn about climate change and also learn how they can create change in their communities. My passions lie at the intersection of Indigenous knowledge and Western science. And I believe that stewardship of the air, land, and sea is inherently connected to all Native people, and that Indigenous peoples have a right to protect and manage the lands that have supported their people since time immemorial. Okay, so my first question for you, Secretary, is youth today have the power and opportunity to combine Indigenous knowledge with Western practices to address climate change. What are meaningful ways that youth can collaborate with you and the DOI to change mindsets, culture, and systems?
Thank you so much, Talia. Hello. Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
No.
Hello. Hello. Okay, maybe I'll just. Can you hear me now? No. Hello? Yes? Okay. So, oh, thank you. That's better. Hello? Testing. Great. Okay. So I mentioned in my remarks about the American Climate Corps and the Indian Youth Service Corps, and those are two programs that are aimed at making sure that we get youth into our department so they can experience what it's like to work for a federal agency. At the Department of the Interior, we have scientists, we have biologists, we have ecologists, we have the United States Geological Survey, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and National Park Service. We have room for folks who want to make our planet into a career. So I encourage any youth to contact our department, doi.gov, and find out ways you can be a part of things. The Indian Youth Service Corps I launched a couple years ago at a wildlife refuge in Albuquerque, and it's very close to one of the pueblos in New Mexico, and immediately we had programs launched, and it's all very exciting. So I think youth have so many of the solutions that we'll need to make sure that we can have a livable planet into the future. Thank you, Talia.
Thank you.
Wombly.
Thank you. That was a great question. So my name is Wombly Gleshka Waniatu Quintana. I am from the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe and an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. I'm currently a high school senior in Dupree, South Dakota, and I am with the Center for Native American Youth as a champion for change for the year 2024. But I owe great thanks to the Cheyenne River Youth Project. The Cheyenne River Youth Project allows for people, specifically youth in my tribe, to grow not only professionally, but also grow emotionally. They have provided me with great opportunities, and they have been such a great support to me, and I'm really thankful for them. Just as I'm very thankful for my elders as well. My elders and specifically my grandmas in my family, I owe great thanks to them for the way they've raised me and the way that they've cared for me and nurtured me. I wasn't fortunate enough to be raised by, traditionally by my mom and my dad, but my grandmas and my grandpas have stepped up. So just as my grandmas have taken care of me, so has the earth. And in our language, Lakota, Unchi Maka means grandmother earth. And grandmother earth provides a place for us all to grow as humans and for us to thrive. Just like how I want to give back to my grandma for raising me, I also would like to give back to the world as a whole, to give the care and the sustenance that it's given me back to her and back to my grandmas, back to the earth. So I would also, with that, my passion is to promote sustainable solutions within our tribal communities. And a way of doing that is by promoting sustainable options and along with energy and recycling and stuff like that, but we'll go more into that later. So I just owe great thanks to you being here, for all my grandmas and grandpas out there in our tribal nations, and for everyone in the crowd for listening today. This really is uplifting for Native youth, and it really is great that you guys are able to create these spaces for us to be heard. So for the first question here, Indigenous people represent approximately 5% of the world's population and are protecting around 80% of the world's biodiversity. We know the crucial the role that we play when it comes to protecting our planet. So what are some actions that are reflective of these Indigenous solutions and values that you have led as the Secretary of Interior?
Thank you so much, Wombly. So as you read the question, I thought about my first trip to Alaska. I went all the way up to Uktiagvik. It used to be Barrow for folks who remember it as that. The highest point in the United States, the most northern point in the United States. And I had a round table with tribal leaders, and among those were whaling captains. So we had several whaling captains who sat around the table, and the first thing they said was, we know where all the whales are. We don't trust your data. If you want to know how many whales are in the waters, you should come and ask us. That's real science, because they're out on their little boats every day. They are in tune to nature in that area. They know what it's like, and they know where these animals are their family members as they see it. And so they're going to care for them and make sure that, that they can pass that knowledge on. So I trust that data implicitly. And that was a really wonderful opportunity for me to really understand what Indigenous knowledge means in practice. I was also thinking about the opportunity for tribes around the country to have pushed, conservation ideas forward. The president signed a proclamation to make Avikwame in Nevada a national monument. And one of the reasons for that was the tribes got together in Nevada and pushed this idea forward. Community-led conservation, tribally led conservation. They are in tune to those lands. They've stewarded them for thousands and thousands of years. And so when it's time for us to listen, we pull up a chair and make sure that tribal leaders and tribal communities have a seat at the table. I think that's the only way for us to make sure that we are doing the right thing. We depend on tribes. As I mentioned in my remarks, our co-stewardship agreements are amazing, and we've had many opportunities to learn in such a generous sense, tribes sharing their knowledge with the department so that we can make the right decisions. But I think if it's one idea, it's making sure that tribes have a seat at the table, and we definitely are doing that. Thank you, Wombly.
Thank you.
So we don't have a whole lot of time left, but Talia, we're going to take one more question from you and then one more from Wombly.
Okay. For many Indigenous communities, the cost of energy can be debilitating, especially in rural or off-the-grid areas. Clean energy efforts seem to target cities or are only available to those who can afford the newest technologies. How do we advocate for Native communities so that they and the land are benefited when it comes to clean energy?
Thank you, Talia. So I returned last week. We visited the Hopi tribe in Arizona, and we visited one of their schools there, which was really amazing. But the other reason we went was to lift up their tribal electrification program. The tribe decided that so many people in that community had spotty or no electricity at all. So they made a plan and decided that the homes that really needed it they would install solar panels. And so we were proud as a department and as an administration to award the Hopi tribe over $4 million so they could expand their tribal electrification program. But I think that not every tribe is the same, not every location is the same. The geography is different in so many areas. And that was their plan, and we were really proud to invest in it. So I think the folks at Hopi will have opportunities to have electricity where before there was none. So I think more plans like that coming from those communities are the ones that we would love to invest in. Thank you, Talia.
Awesome, thank you.
That's such a great question. So as a high school senior living in Eagle Butte, South Dakota on the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Reservation, I have big dreams and aspirations for my community and for our future as a whole. I want to lead my community in establishing sustainable practices like reducing waste, recycling, and transitioning to a more environmentally friendly practices. So I'm aware that a sustainable transition can be a little nuanced and complex. As someone who has worked alongside and led in sectors from local to tribal to federal, what are the best practices and partnerships that you can share in creating a more sustainable future for my community and communities like it?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. And let's see, I was thinking just now about how we started phasing out one-use plastic bottles out of our national parks. That is a big deal. We are installing refillable water stations, and that is a transition that will happen over time, but making folks aware that one-use plastic bottles create a gigantic landfill issue because a lot of those bottles do not get recycled, and it just helps people to become more aware. So it's an easy one for me. I've been taking my refillable water around for many decades. But that's one thing that we're doing. Also, Wombly, I was down south visiting tribes in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and several of those tribes are actually investing in recycling centers. That is important to them, and they feel like it will employ folks. It'll be a sustainable model for into the future. So I'd love to see you reach out to some tribes that are doing the things that you want to do, and finding out how they did it and bringing the ideas back to your tribal council. I think they'll be really excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Please welcome Jennifer Carroll McNeil.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jennifer Carroll McNeil. I'm an Irish government minister. I'm like the Undersecretary for Treasury in Ireland. And I'm so excited to be here in Miami with you this evening to talk about Ireland's energy transition and, crucially, how we pay for it. So what do you think of when you think of Ireland as a place, apart from Cillian Murphy winning Best Actor for Oppenheimer last night? Yes, fantastic. But apart from Cillian Murphy, what do you think when you think about Ireland? It's a small, fairly cold island in the North Atlantic that's really very windy. And I don't just mean it's government ministers when they're speaking, I mean it's just windy all the time, and we have to put up with that. But what it is, though, it's a very, very beautiful place. It's got beautiful green hills, it's got beautiful green fields, but it's also much, much bigger than you think. So I want to introduce you tonight to the real map of Ireland, which was here a second ago. There we go, the real map of Ireland. And you can see actually that the island of Ireland is quite small when you compare it to the actual territory that we are in control of. The territory that we're in control of in the sea is 10 times larger than the island of Ireland. It's 220 million acres. It's the size of Florida and Texas combined. And it's Europe's biggest opportunity for floating renewable energy. It's got the best conditions, it's all right there. The technology is just about ready to be deployed on a commercial basis, and Ireland is 100% committed to filling this space with floating renewable energy. That's what we're going to do. Now, I want to tell you, when I say this, I mean it. Ireland was the first country to divest all public funds from fossil fuels back in 2018. We put it into law, and nothing goes there. And Ireland is Europe's leader in terms of the share of our energy that we get from onshore wind. We are the onshore wind leaders in Europe. And as I said, I don't just mean the talking, I mean the energy production. 41% of our energy last month came from onshore wind, but we want to be leaders offshore. And our target is 37 gigawatts by 2050. And so to put in context, I understand the US equivalent ambition is 110 gigawatts, but we really have this quite exceptional space, and the conditions are quite unique for wind energy. So this is why I wanted to show you this real map of Ireland, that if you went away with just one thing tonight, that you remember that Ireland is so much bigger than you think, and that most of it is just sitting there waiting for not just offshore wind and how we connect that back to Ireland. How we connect, we're building an interconnector between Ireland and France. We're going to be able to move that energy onto the continent. We're building an interconnector between Ireland and the UK. We're going to move that energy into the UK. But not just that, as you well know, what's being developed is the opportunity to generate hydrogen out at sea, and to be able to use that in really intelligent ways. Here's something I know you don't know about Ireland. 60% of the airplanes in the world are leased out of Dublin. We have this incredibly outsized aircraft leasing industry, and you know what they want to do? Sustainable aviation fuel. And they want to do it through our opportunity in Ireland. So we have all of these connected industries that are thinking about this all of the time. Now, we have some credibility with the things that we say we're going to do. We have the youngest population in Europe, the highest proportion of STEM graduates in Europe. We have a talented English-speaking workforce that want to do this, and a series of research centers that are driving the technology. But we have an innovative group of people living and working in Ireland. And we know that. We have 9 out of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies based in Ireland, 8 of the top 10 US technology companies based in Ireland, 20 of the top 25 financial services firms based in Ireland, 14 of the 15 medtech global leaders based in Ireland. So we have innovators there working all of the time, and we are able to deliver the things that we say we're going to deliver. But I'm the Deputy Minister for Finance, so I know you've got to pay for things, you've got to finance things. And while the government has a huge capital investment program into all of the pieces that go with this, the offshore technology, the ports, the roads, all of the infrastructure that sits behind this incredible opportunity, we know that this is delivered by the deployment of private capital, and that the scale of that is very, very significant, but that, as other speakers have said today, it's a huge opportunity. It's an absolutely huge opportunity for private capital. Now again, Ireland is a leader in sustainable finance. Fun fact, Dublin is the #1 location globally for ESG-listed sustainable finance already. The UNDP is backing us with that as well, the UN Development Programme. Just late last year, I had 41 sustainable centres of finance come to Dublin to come together to agree a series of principles, in particular around gender in sustainable finance and how that works. And they come to Dublin because we are leaders not just in sustainable finance, but in climate finance. But that's only, that's only part of it. This opportunity, this financing opportunity is very, very significant. But I, on behalf of the Irish government, I've got to put my money behind these opportunities. And we have a sovereign wealth fund in Ireland that has taken early positions in Irish renewable companies that have shown that it's possible to be really, really successful. Let me give you the example of Greencoat Renewables. Greencoat Renewables, tiny, small little company in 2017. The Irish Sovereign Wealth Fund took about a 28% stake in it. It's now, it has assets of 2.5 billion euros across 6 countries in Europe, generating energy, generating 1.5 gigawatts of energy, and it'll get to 4 gigawatts by 2030. The seed capital investment by the Irish government enabled this Irish company to go and deliver energy right now to nearly 1 million homes across Europe, and there's so much more to do. I can't encourage you enough to invest in sustainable finance. I can't encourage you enough to invest in the sort of projects that are going to make this topography look very, very different. All of the challenges that we're talking about tonight, they have to be delivered in a practical way. And here I am saying to you, this is the windiest part of Europe. We have a huge, absolutely huge territory. The government is entirely committed to making this happen. And we want to work with investment funds. We want to work with companies. We want to work with innovators to make Ireland the centre for renewable energy, offshore renewable energy, to make sure that Ireland and Europe deliver its obligation to be net zero by 2050. Thank you so much for having me, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
And now, please welcome to the stage, Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan.
Good evening. How's everybody? What a wonderful program. Wow, what an honor to be with you tonight from the flip side of Florida. You know, for many years, Jacksonville was behind the curve. But I am proud to say that we are not only catching up, but even leading the way with bold action now on climate. Jacksonville is the largest city by land area in the contiguous U.S., 850 square miles. Larger than New York and Los Angeles put together. We're also the most populous city in Florida with over 1 million residents, and more than half of the land area in our city is undeveloped forests, wetlands, grasslands, and agriculture lands. Our city is surrounded, literally made of water. Between our river, our tributaries, and ocean, we have more than 1,500 miles of coastline, more than any other U.S. city. So our relationship with water is both a great strength and also our Achilles heel if we do not tackle the increasing challenges of climate change and flood risk head on. We've already begun to suffer the effects of climate change in our city from storms like Matthew and Irma and last summer's record temperatures, several days in a row over 113 in the heat index. And we know that rising sea levels, more frequent and intense storms, and rising temperatures are here to stay. So given this formidable challenge and the vast size and scale of our city, Jacksonville really did require a profound course change and a new approach to resilience. So in October of 2023, we launched a groundbreaking strategy called Resilient Jacksonville that is backed by science and data. We took a great deal of care to ensure that every corner of Jacksonville was studied, all 850 square miles. That holistic and place-based resilience actions were tailored to the many people, geographies, communities, and ecosystems that make up Jacksonville. We know the climate risks and resilience opportunities vary across our city. In our downtown, we are completely rebuilding our riverfront and investing $132 million in a wonderful green belt called the Emerald Trail, connecting 14 historic and underserved neighborhoods. This is an unprecedented investment in infrastructure and climate mitigation. We are reducing chronic flooding through restoration of our urban tributaries like McCoy's Creek, and in just the last 8 months alone, we've created heating and cooling centers to respond to the extreme temperature events, completed the first ever greenhouse gas inventory for the region through the EPA Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, and received millions in federal funding like the Energy Efficiency Community Block Grant. Our strategy focuses heavily on growth. Over the next 50 years, Jacksonville is expected to see over 500,000 new residents moving into our city. We've calculated that if development continues in its current manner, we'll have 3 times as many residents living at risk of flooding as we do today. That's why our strategy dives deep into where and how we develop. We are actively working with our development community to infuse resilience into our regulations to ensure we can meet the needs of the future. We want to be a city where our young people choose to stay, families choose to set down roots, and businesses choose to invest. So I am very proud to announce that we are developing the first citywide compound flood model in the nation. Yes, this is amazing. We have a QR code so you can download this to take a look. This cutting-edge model will give Jacksonville the clearest picture of our flood risk down to the block or street level, even telling us how long and to what extent a road will flood. This puts us in the best position to make informed capital planning and emergency decisions in real time. With Resilient Jacksonville as our guide, Jacksonville is quickly entering a new area of innovation and moving quickly toward a brighter, more resilient future for the next 50 years and beyond. We are so excited to share this with you. We hope you'll download it and take a look. We can't wait to collaborate with you as well on next steps, and we look forward to tackling climate change together. Thank you so much for having me.
And now, Kathleen Barron and Jason Grumet with Amy Harder.
Hello, everyone. We are thrilled to be here. My name is Amy Harder. I'm founding executive editor of Cipher News, a relatively new publication covering climate solutions with a particular focus on technologies, which is really going to be the core of how we address this issue. Earlier on, we heard that we're not going to sacrifice our way out of this problem. We're going to need new technologies. And that's really what the 2 folks I have up here on stage with me are all about. To my immediate left, we have Jason Grumet, he's the CEO of the American Clean Power Association. We have Kathleen Barron, Executive Vice President of Constellation, the country's biggest operator of nuclear power plants. Before I start in with you 2, I want to throw out a question to the audience. Quick raise of hands. Raise your hand if you think fossil fuel companies have a role to play in deploying clean energy. Okay, I think maybe about a third, maybe a half. For those joining us online, wanted to make sure you had a readout. Jason, why is that an important question to somebody like you?
Well, Amy, nice to see you. First of all, I'm very proud of my bracelet. Kathleen has one too. Amy, not so much.
Apparently,
not a good
I don't
braider.
know how to braid.
Not a good
I'm convinced it was the ribbon.
Not a good braider. All right, so really great to be here with y'all. It is an incredibly important issue because companies that have produced fossil fuels for the last century have all the money. And so here's the great thing. Last year, over 2/3 of the renewable power deployed in this country was deployed by companies that also have fossil and nuclear assets. Now, for 20 years, many of my friends and I have been, telling these big companies that they needed to invest more money in the clean energy transition. And so they're doing it, which I think is kind of fantastic because you want to have the largest logistics companies in the world devoted to what is the largest scale challenge we've ever faced. But I think implicit in your question is not everybody loves that so much, right? There is a certain ethos in climate advocacy of, the Luke Skywalker energy versus the Darth Vader energy. And that's just not how we're rolling anymore, right? I represent the companies that build the biggest, beautiful machines in the world that are producing energy, in addition to Kathleen's, without carbon. And they're really big companies, and they own lots of stuff, and they are rapacious, which is exactly what the planet needs.
And some of your members are fossil fuel companies, like BP and Shell, for example.
BP and Shell, who are really good at doing things on the offshore continental shelf and are some of the leading companies building offshore wind power. So it's a complicated equation, but I think what we've heard throughout the day in different ways is this is about speed and scale. You know, my favorite blues singer, Howlin' Wolf, has a song, "I'm built for comfort, baby. I ain't built for speed." That's not a bad description of how the U.S. is moving when it comes to confronting the climate crisis. So we've got a lot of work to do.
And I think you're coming from a perspective that is just not focused on what the fossil fuel industry has done in the past, which I know can be a difficult pill to swallow, but you're looking forward at deploying clean energy.
So look, F. Scott Fitzgerald has a great quote, I think about it every day, which is the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold opposing ideas in your mind at the same time and still be able to function. We are living in an age of opposing ideas. So just to give you two, last year, the best year ever for renewable power. Fantastic. 34 gigawatts of renewable power put on the grid, right? Just absolutely great. I've hired 50 people. My companies are doing great. We're moving at about a third the pace we need to be moving at if we're going to actually solve the climate crisis, right? So both those things are true. More progress than ever before, not nearly enough to solve the problem, and the space between where we are and where we need to be is called public policy. And it means building things much faster and much bigger. It means doing things in ways that are different from the laws. For 50 years, we've had a certain set of environmental laws, and we say climate change is everything. But a lot of people don't want to change any of those laws, right? So we're not going to actually find a comfortable way to a climate solution. I think Secretary Granholm talked about not wanting to, end your days scarless. We're going to all have to make some really tough choices and have things built in our neighborhoods that we may not all want to see if we actually want to have a sustainable climate.
I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but Kathleen, I wanted to turn to you. But first, audience, you're not off the hook yet. One more question. Raise your hand if you think nuclear power should be a climate solution. Raise your hand if you changed your mind on that in the last 5 to 10 years. If you're being honest with yourself. I think more hands would go up, but a few hands went up and most hands went up to say yes. And as a journalist who's been covering this for 15 years, that was not the case something like 10 years ago. And that's been a big and important shift. Yet still 55% of the American public supports nuclear power, according to Gallup, which is the highest it's been in a decade, but still far lower than wind and solar. Kathleen, how can we convince?
Why are you so unpopular?
Yeah.
Well, I have my own polling numbers, Jason. They're a little bit higher than where Gallup came out, but that is the exciting thing that we're seeing right now is nuclear's always been a climate solution. I mean, these plants have been on the grid in many cases for 50 years. We have some plants that are older than me, believe it or not. And they've always been abating carbon. Right now, 50% of the clean energy in the US comes from nuclear power. 20% of all electricity comes from nuclear power. And because these machines are on the grid, we are avoiding 500 million metric tons of carbon every year. This audience knows what that means, but for others, the context, that's the equivalent of the pollution from 100 million passenger cars. So these plants are on the system because they're running. We are not running other machines that would emit carbon, air pollution, hazardous air pollutants. And the thing that I'm most excited about is it has changed so much. This industry has gotten a new lease on life. We've alone hired 2,500 new people in the last 2 years. And we have people coming out of school who are excited about working at a nuclear station, which is good because they're really high-paying jobs, and we're happy to have them. And we are seeing support on both sides of the aisle for the technology, which shows up all the time in Congress, where people can't agree on anything. They can agree that we need to keep the existing nuclear plants running, and we need to grow the industry as well.
I want to go a bit deeper on that last point. So there's a lot of talk about advanced nuclear power, but really that 50% of carbon-free electricity in the US is all from the existing nuclear power plants. So can you tell me why 80 years isn't old? And that's not a presidential campaign comment.
What Amy's talking about is really the durability of this fleet. As I mentioned, some of our plants are over 50 years old, and they are licensed by the federal regulator in Washington that decides how long their license will be. And many of them have had licenses that extend to 60 years. But more recently, plants that are coming up on that 60-year limit have gone to the federal regulator and said, we think the plant's safe to run to 80. And the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, has agreed. They look at the technology, they look at the environmental impact, and they say, absolutely, these plants are really undergoing renovation all the time. I mean, just our company alone puts over $1 billion of new capital into the machines every year, switching out pumps, turbines, all kinds of equipment. So they are able to keep running to 80, and they could probably keep running longer. I mean, if you think about it, hydroelectric dams, for example, we have one in Maryland that is 100 years old. These pieces of equipment can stay on the grid for a very long period of time, and we should want them to as we ramp up new sources of clean energy. We need all of it, but these plants can last a very long time.
Because if these plants retire, we're actually going backwards.
Right, it's back
the
to
exact time we need to be sprinting forward.
That 500 million metric tons of carbon that we're avoiding comes onto the system.
So Jason, I want to come back to you. You mentioned, you hinted at this about opposition to renewable energy and all types of energy, frankly, in communities. A lot of people call it NIMBYism, not in my backyard. I want to briefly quote a study from Nature from June 2023, which found that wind and solar resources could be constrained by up to 87% and 38% respectively if just one kind of local policy, requirements imposing a setback from production, is adopted across the US. That's 87% of wind resources and 38% of solar. That is a lot that could be constrained if these policies go forth. Jason, what are you doing to respond to these efforts while at the same time not disregarding concerns from local communities?
Yeah, so it's a really complicated and important question. So there is a combination of just authentic, organic, local concern that, you know, kind of comes up anytime there's change, and this is the clean industrial revolution, and so there's a lot of change. There's also some efforts to kind of weaponize some of those local concerns by other national movements that are not so enthusiastic about the transition to clean power. Companies are doing a lot better at it. I think there is an effort now to be more engaged at the front end of a process when it comes to bringing a big new industrial site to a community. Communities are enjoying the tax base that they get. I mean, 80% of the clean power that is being deployed under the Inflation Reduction Act is going into rural parts of the country. 80% of it is going into districts that are currently led by Republicans, right? So there is a significant kind of economic revival in rural America that is positive. But I think the other part of it is, again, public policy. So it turns out that the states that are most forward-leaning in trying to accelerate the clean energy transition, states like California, Illinois, New York, Michigan, they've all passed state laws basically preventing local communities from coming up with these kinds of ordinances and restrictions that are not in the interest, according to the state legislature, of the broader interest of the state. So we really do have a challenge, right? There's a certain ethos of local community control and that kind of small is beautiful idea. Remember E.F. Schumacher behind kind of the early founding of the environmental movement. That's just not really lining up with what it's going to take to solve the climate crisis. So there is going to be a kind of reckoning between our desire, in theory, for local control and the reality that we have to have national and global solutions really, really fast. Just to be like, if we had 100 years, it'd be fine. We've got 35 years, 25 years, depending on what your math looks like for 2050 or 2060. So it's a real challenge. I think one of the biggest challenges we have right now to achieving our climate solution is addressing those kinds of local opponents.
So opposition is, of course, one big concern, but it's not the only one. And a question I think that binds, or a challenge that binds both of you, are just economic costs. And so we see headlines that higher interest rates is really challenging to renewable energy, and that particularly for advanced nuclear power and even some existing nuclear power plants, that they're just too expensive compared to, in your case, affordable wind and solar, but now you're facing high upfront capital costs because of the interest rates. How do you face these economic headwinds that are coming in a year where we could have a big political headwinds?
Yeah, I mean, I think the economic challenge that was facing the nuclear fleet 5 years ago was competing in a market between heavily subsidized renewables and fossil plants that did not bear the cost of their pollution. So that was the reason that there were plants retiring in the last decade. With the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, that includes a tax credit for continued operation of nuclear plants, much lower than the credit that's available to renewables because renewables are more expensive to get onto the grid. The existing fleet is in a good spot, and then I think that's why I mentioned the amount of hiring that we've done and the amount of interest that we have in the continued operation of the fleet. If I think about challenges, what I would mention is, you know, we've been here for a couple hours, and I heard Bill Nye say the word reliable. And he's the only person I heard say the word reliable. And the reason I mention that is because we are so fortunate in this country. Most of the planet does not have reliable electricity in the second that they want it the way we do. And it is making our economy possible. It's not the electricity, it's what we do with the electricity, as the Secretary said. And we have to make sure that stays the case. Because 99% of the people in this country, if you ask them if they'd like to have brown power or no power, they will pick brown power. And it's our job in this room and on this stage to make sure they don't have to make that choice, and that we are adding clean energy and operating clean energy that is there when customers need it. That has to flow through our policies, and it has to flow through everything we do when we're deploying, as Secretary Granholm said, building and operating clean energy that is there when customers need it in the heat of the summer and the cold of the winter, because we have had situations even in this country, Texas, California, in the mid-Atlantic, Christmas Eve 2 years ago, when we did not have enough supply to meet demand. And that is not okay. We can't let that happen. So all of us working on this grid is so essential to everything we do. We have to make sure it stays operating and it grows to meet the demand of electrifying all the things, all the places in the economy that we want to electrify.
So this is the non-carbon Keep the Lights On Club. 80% of the new power brought online last year was renewable power, right? We're doing good. Renewable power has a great advantage. The fuel's free, but it's expensive to build the giant offshore wind turbines. And so I think when you have a high inflationary environment, you know, there's some headwind there. But again, I just want to stress that, you know, the industry's doing great. You know, we're growing 25, 30% a year. We're on it, right? There's going to be ups and downs, but the clean power industry is going to be very successful no matter what. The climate's not doing great. And that's the space that people have to pay attention to. I also agree with Kathleen, if the lights ever go out, we all lose. Probably renewables the most, because we're the new folks on the block, so we're going to get blamed no matter who's, you know, at fault. Usually we're all at fault when the lights go out. So the economics are a challenge. The current, you know, investment climate and the incentives from Congress are fantastic. What we have now is more of a challenge in democracy than we have in technology. It's our decision-making processes that are stopping us from achieving our climate goals, not the economics or the technology.
In our final moments together, I want to conclude with what I call a lightning round, where I ask word association, and you just say the first word that pops into your head and no more. Don't overthink it. First word is hydrogen.
Awesome.
Expensive.
China.
Building a lot of nuclear.
Big.
Power lines.
Needed.
Awesome.
U.S. Congress.
That's a hard one, Amy. Trying.
Tired.
Well, with those laughs, we will leave it there. Thank you both.
We have one more panel this evening. Please stand by.
Look up, see something new. The cleanest sky in decades. Should this happen only once in a lifetime? It's something to reflect on. Do we need a lockdown to get there? Or can the answer come naturally? Can we move and breathe and leave no trace at all? It's time we all went electric. Ladies and gentlemen, for our final presentation of the evening, the CEO of Fiat, DS Automobiles, and Global Chief Marketing Officer of Stellantis, Olivier Francois.
Thank you. And thank you so much for sticking with us tonight. I know it's late. I'll make that short, knowing that looking at the first line of the slide, I guess you are thinking another car CEO crashing a climate conference, telling us it's safe to drink the washer fluid. And the second line makes it even worse. As you can see here, I'm also a marketer, and I know what to think about marketers. They blow enough hot air to contribute to climate change, even in this room. But luckily, there is a third line, which says that I live here. I live in Miami. And you know, to me, Miami is sweet life at its best. Well, the only time it might not feel like spring break is during spring break. But you see my point. Miami is all about Dolce Vita like Fiat. Now, whoever lives here also knows that climate change is at our door. So this is, I think, the perfect place to speak to Dolce Vita and a more sustainable mobility. By the way, the perk of living in Miami is that I could literally come here by bicycle or paddleboard, but today I rode my bike. It's a better look in business attire. So let's go back to the reason I'm here, and obviously I'm not here to sell electric bicycles. I'm not here to peddle you a car either. I'm here because I want to change the narrative attached to the auto industry. I'm here to listen, to learn, and possibly to make a difference. You know, when you work for a company at my level, you are always in a position to help make that difference. And good thing, I am at the right company. Fiat has always strived for efficiency way before climate change was a buzzword. You know, think of the first Cinquecento in 1957. It was minimalist genius in a world of sheet metal and fins. Furthermore, the first mass-produced electric car was not what you think. It was, in fact, a Fiat, the Panda Elettra in 1990. You see, Fiat is a company that has been around for 125 years because it has always leaned into what's next. That's what fuels us, regardless of what fuel propels our vehicles. Now, the second reason is this new Fiat aspire to be as ethical as it is practical. So what I mean here is, you know, we took our most critical model, our most iconic model, and if I may, our most sold model, and we made it all electric and only electric. I think we may be the first and the only legacy car company to give up on fossil fuel on our most iconic nameplates. It's like saying, you know, I tried to find a metaphor, you know, from now on, the Big Mac becomes exclusively vegetarian. That's a little bit what we did. So you get it. It's not an easy decision, but it is not like we are killing the cash cow. Quite the opposite. We give it a future. And that's probably why Leonardo DiCaprio signed on to collaborate on the launch in Europe. So, are these decisions a bit radical on a corporate level? Perhaps. But they are totally beneficial on a human one. And speaking of doing right, we are taking the commitment even further. So our new Cinquecento is not just green, it's also red. That's why we chose to launch this car in the red version first. I mean, red obviously not as a color, but as an organization. Look, I should be proud of the fact that Cinquecento is an extraordinary product. I should be proud of the awards. But you know what I'm most proud of? Well, it's the fact that Fiat is the only car brand that was picked by my friend Bono for Red. Why? Because each car we sell supports world health. And a healthy vita is definitely a more dolce vita. Now I know this room is familiar with causes more than with cars, so I won't try to sell you the car, but rather the cause. Mine is for Fiat to deliver on our group's commitment to carbon neutrality by 2038 and getting halfway by 2030. So to be specific, the Stellantis group sells about 7 million cars a year globally, of which 1.4 million are from Fiat. So Fiat has a big weight, and this comes with a big responsibility. Now, Fiat is not just bigger than you think, it's also more Italian than you think. That's why this new Fiat 500e doesn't just have a face, a smile, and a voice. That's literally the sound of the car when it starts. You'll see, it's very, very special. But it does not just have a smile, a face, and a voice, it has a conscience. You see, the fact that the world is buying green is great, but the fact that there is a conscience behind our business decision, that is even greater. But now, what about the consumer? Well, when you look at the Earth climate, you realize there's a shift towards zero emission is necessary. But when you look at the consumer climate, you understand that the adoption is a bit cooler. So going green comes with an obligation to inspire change. Our cars are home here because they are vehicles of change. Now, for us, change started with a vision. Let's make exactly what an electric car should be. So what do I mean here? Let's face it, electric cars are only as good as the charging network around them. No? And as you see, we are working on it, 30,000 fast chargers starting this year. But let's be clear, the most appropriate use case for pure EVs is the urban environment. And that's a little bit what I want to tell you here today. You know, urban environment, that's the best cure for range anxiety. And that's why a pure city car, EV, makes sense for the consumer, for the cities, for the business. So this is my main message today. The conversation should start here in our congested cities. First, I believe cities have the most to gain from clean mobility. Remember the before and after photos during the pandemic, breathtaking in a good way. By the way, it's not just about the sky, it's also about the ground. We are in Miami, so we know space is at a premium. So smaller cars mean democracy of parking, democracy of access, to city centers. And last, it's about noise pollution. So you see, electric cars offer a comprehensive solution. Then there's another thing, battery size. You know, big vehicles need big batteries. Large EVs have batteries that weigh almost as much as the whole Cinquecento. This electric Fiat is the lightest EV for sale in the US. So my point here is, a city car should carry precious cargo instead of precious metal. So at Fiat, the commitment to reduce, reuse, and recycle starts at the factory. First, our iconic test track on the rooftop of the Lingotto in Turin is now home to the second largest hanging garden in Europe, and it's open for anyone in Turin. And second, at our Mirafiori facility, another facility in Torino, we collect solar energy from the rooftop, and that solar power charges every 500e that leaves the factory. So let me put it this way. Our little Cinquecentos will arrive in the US packed with the sun of Italy. So to wrap this, 500 is an icon of Italian design, an icon of accessibility, and an icon of change. That's exactly what my job is. feeding the appetite for change, converting as many American driveways as I can, giving people their first taste of an electric future. This is the whole point. My mission is to take you to more than just work or the store, but into the EV category. Look, back in the days when Fiat started, it introduced an entire generation to mobility. So today, this electric Cinquecento can be people's first EV, introducing a generation of drivers to sustainability. So again, if it is true that EVs are the gateway to greener mobility, our job is to make appealing cars that makes the transition as easy and exciting as possible. I want to add a smile by passing the pump, by bringing a bit of La Dolce Vita to an everyday commute. So this is my message today. You know, duty, the sense of duty, if not of guilt, won't do the job alone. No, what will make the job will be beauty. Because beauty can fuel duty. Aspiration can bring harmony between your wants and your needs. Emotion can electrify motion. And as an unintended consequence, EVs make the driving experience even more fun. So we will make green beautiful, we will make red desirable, and we will use the white space of urban EVs to protect the Vita in Dolce Vita. Thank you.
Please join us for the opening reception across the street at the Miami Beach Botanical Garden.